We are back on MorningLine as our final segment this morning. Tim Takis, elder law attorney, is with us. Taking some calls, and we're getting a few this morning. If you want to jump in, 737-7587. I think we've got Barbara. Should we take Barbara?
Sure.
Let's do it. Good morning, Barbara.
Yes, I would just like to ask how long a creditor can come after you on a credit card.
Okay, like one that was passed from someone else or your own?
My own. I've been paying like $100 a month, and I owe like $20,000, and I owe another one that I hadn't paid anything on yet. But I hadn't got a letter from them, but I've been owing them for about 3 years. Is it a statute of limitations or?
And you're on a fixed income, right?
On a fixed income.
And how much do you owe?
Well, 20 on the other one, but I've probably paid it down to 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bear. And it's a little off topic, but she's a senior, and
Sure,
she's someone
yeah.
dealing with credit
Right.
card debt that a lot of people deal with, and creditors can drive you crazy. And yes, they're going to make the calls and come at you.
Right.
But
Now,
I don't know. What's your recommendation there?
There, she says, one of the questions that she had, is there a statute of limitations? Well, yes, there is. And I'm thinking, since I don't practice in this area, I'm thinking that it might be 6 years, 3 years. I don't know.
You mean for debt that you owe?
The debt that you owe.
Really? Because I thought debt. I mean, you know, you owe it, right?
You do,
it doesn't just magically go away if you wait long enough.
Well,
does it?
I mean, if you let's say it's a breach of contract. All right? You go out and you buy something on credit or whatever it is, and you don't pay for it. Okay, that's a breach of contract. So the creditor has a certain number of years to file suit.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
You know, and it's kind of like a credit card. If you fail to pay the credit card, you know, then you're in default. You know, and
they may not file suit. They may just report you to the crediting agency,
right,
depending on the amount of money, and your credit will be toast.
Right, exactly. And then whether they ever sue you or not. The thing is, though, if she's making payments, every time she makes a payment, she rekindles the statute of limitations.
Okay. Now, and I appreciate the fact she's trying to pay it.
Yeah.
So, I think she means well.
Sure, but
on
they
that.
don't. But a creditor does. You know, okay, you owe $20,000. You know, and if you just send them $100 a month, the creditor does not have to accept that unless you reach an agreement with the creditor.
Right. And that's the thing you may want to
accept
seek. I mean, the bottom line on this is she's a woman on a fixed income. There are agencies out there that are actually helped financed by credit card companies that try to get people to figure out a way to get out of their debt and not just set up a payment plan, but also you can negotiate. I mean, you may owe $15,000, and then you can get with them and say, listen, this is where my situation is. Can we find a way to reduce this debt? But do not let them bully you or push you. You're not going to go to jail for this. The worst that's going to happen probably is it's going to damage your credit. And you know, if you're a senior on a fixed income anyway, you're not planning on needing a ton of credit anyway, are you?
No, probably.
So I don't want her worried about that. But at the same time, the right thing is to make good on your debt. So get in touch with some of these agencies. I don't have a number offhand, but there are agencies that will help you negotiate a settlement with a credit card company.
Yeah, and I would suspect probably somewhere down the road you've done a show on that or something.
Yes.
Maybe you've had somebody come in and talk about consumer affairs or whatever it is and what consumers can do. And that, I mean, that's excellent. You know, call if you can't work something out with the creditor. You know, where they say, look, we know, I mean, because they don't want to chase after that lady if it's not going to do any good.
Right, and they want to get something rather than nothing if they can negotiate a settlement of some type.
Right.
But how much from her?
And it
knows?
could be a lump sum, and she says, look, I've got $10,000 in my checking account, and that's all I have. You know, and they might say, look, send us $500 and we'll go away.
Yeah, something like that. Especially someone in this. Trust me, there are people out there with a lot more credit card debt than her that are they're not paying it.
Right.
That does make me wonder in terms of, and this wasn't to her question, but do you ever inherit someone else's debt? If you co-signed on something,
you would.
But aside from that, do you inherit someone else's debt? Like if your spouse dies and she has debt,
Yes.
can there be a separation, or if she's your spouse, it's automatically
Yeah,
on you?
because here's the thing about that is that in most states, and certainly in Tennessee, is that each spouse is responsible for the other spouse's necessities.
Okay.
Okay, food, shelter, all of those sorts of things, as you can imagine, medical
But
care.
even if you have separate credit cards and everything, but you're married.
Because being married, I'm
Yeah, I
responsible, and my wife's responsible for, my necessities. Now, if I have a gambling debt or something like that, or I go out and I buy, toys, and I don't pay for them, then my wife is not responsible for that. But if I go out and buy, clothes and food and all that other stuff.
So why would the wife not be responsible for you buying a jet boat and dying and having a bunch of money owed on it?
Right, because, unless somehow they can connect, the creditor can connect my wife to my toys.
Well, isn't that the same as...
Because it's not a necessity.
Oh, so it's only necessities that you would owe debt on.
Right.
Oh, okay, so there is a separation.
There is a separation.
Okay, I guess that's
there.
even what I was thinking about when I
Right.
asked that question, is
Yeah.
if you're buying a bunch of toys or doing crazy stuff, gambling and falling into debt, since they're not necessities, if you die and you have a bunch of debt, okay, they can't
Right.
go after the wife for that.
Right. Right. Now, they could sue my estate, and so, they could collect that way. I mean, because... maybe my wife's not, she's not personally responsible, but my estate is.
Yeah, because that's what's left with the other. As far as aside from spouses, is there any other instance? I obviously you would probably accept the debt, wouldn't you, of a younger child that's underage?
I'd be a minor child,
somehow.
right? Yeah.
But not your parents.
Not your parents.
Of course. And if you have, let's just say she gets a bunch of credit cards and runs up $300,000 debt, and it's just her. And she just dies.
It's gone. Unless the creditor can find an asset that she owned at her death.
Does that happen very often?
I doubt it. I'm sure it does, but not. I doubt very often.
But they just, you'd have to be in a unique situation because they could go after your.
Your
estate.
you mentioned something that about the, about parents or children being responsible for their parents' debt.
Okay.
There is a movement. I don't know how it's not come to Tennessee yet, but I've heard about other states, called filial responsibility. Okay, so what that means is, and I know they have it in Pennsylvania, or at least the last time that I looked, is okay. Your mom and dad, your dad goes into the nursing home.
Okay.
Then there's like a filial responsibility law in Pennsylvania. That the children are, have some sort of responsibility. So assuming that dad goes into a nursing home in Pennsylvania and he has no money.
All right.
Then, and I don't know.
Now, typically in other states where it's not like that, if dad goes into a nursing home with no money, it's being paid for by
Medicaid.
Medicaid.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll go there, but now they're thinking of getting that money back from the children?
Apparently they are, yeah. And I don't know all the ins and outs of those laws because we don't have it here and most states don't. But to my knowledge, Pennsylvania was the first one several years ago to put it in.
Interesting.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, so what's your take on that? I mean, it seems to me like, there can be children that have been estranged from their parents for years. There could be children who had wanted to do other things to care for their parents. Maybe their parents chose to do their own thing. And I understand if it's a child, maybe that's very involved and places the parent there and is right there, maybe then they say, well, yeah, you put them there, you need to pay for it.
Yeah, but then
if you're not involved.
But like you're saying is that what if you're, like you said, you got three, you got three children, and one of them lives in Texas or some other place, and and you call up your sibling and say, well, the state of, the state of nowhere is telling us that we need to, we need to cough up, and your sister or your brother says, go pound sand.
Yeah. I'm not going to.
I haven't seen Daddy in 2 decades, and he told me in no uncertain terms that I was out of the well, so he's yours.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, you have all of that sort of thing.
I just wonder
how,
but you think that could be something that we start, and obviously it comes down to
what
it's becoming such a drain financially on the system that they're looking for other ways to finance it.
That's really what it is.
And I don't know if there'll be legal challenges to that. That's interesting.
It could be a perception that, okay, Daddy goes into the nursing home and that he gave all of his money to his kids, so he would be,
now you don't know whether something like that.
You don't whether that's all, comes into play there, but it's just something that you asked the question, and I just got to thinking about that. About inheriting your parents' debt. In a way, that there's that filial responsibility law that could be. Now, there are cases where, let's say, you're power of attorney for your father, for instance, and he goes to the nursing home, and, although you're not responsible for his debt, but you're responsible, if you're his power of attorney, you're responsible for making sure that bill got paid out of his assets. There have been cases like that.
Okay, meaning then that if I didn't, or...
Yeah.
Okay, but they would take the money out of his estates.
Or maybe, let's say that your daddy's in the nursing home, and you told the nursing home as his power of attorney, well, I don't like the care that you're providing. Go pound sand, and then daddy dies, and you could be personally liable for that.
Gotcha.
Because you didn't use his money to pay his bill. Right.
All these things to think about.
Right.
So many questions, and it can be confusing. Remind folks, if you will, and we can put the number up, or I'll have it later in the at the end of the segment. But tell people where your office is.
Yeah, I'm in Hendersonville.
There it is,
there we go. Phone number 615-824-2571.
And talk about the website.
Yeah, certainly you want to check us out on the website. If you tn-elderlaw.com, or you can Google on or put my name in your favorite search engine. And put my name in, and maybe Tennessee or elder law or something, and I'm going to come right up.
And there's a lot of information in there, just background, some of these basic questions we talk about here. But
we have a lot of stuff on our website.
Well, like Rick called earlier, that's the number you want to call, check, and if he can't help you himself, he has an amazing network, as long as he's been doing this, where he can refer you to experts who can help you, and he's good about that. Phone call doesn't cost you anything either.
Right.
Tim, as always.
Always great to see you
And the
again.
lovely Lynn was here as well.
Yep.
I love her. You're a lucky guy.
I am.
All right, my friend. We'll see you again soon.
So are you.
Yeah, I guess so. She brings me jelly.
You have the great job.
Take care, my friend.
All right,
I'll be back.
too.
Programming note about tomorrow right after this.